Welcome to Season 3 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sarah F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sarah F. Hathaway.
Welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 110, Season 3, episode 28. So there hasn't been anything really exciting going on in my corner of the world. We've still been just caulking the house and then, of course, gardening like crazy. So, my tomatoes are starting to come in. That's super exciting. I've got a lot of pickles this year, which is going to be good. I wish I would have got a little bit more. My squash is off the chain right now. And, we had actually put pieces of fish under them like the natives used to do. And it really worked. They're super spectacular. We did that with a couple of our cucumber plants, but we also planted them in a different area. The soil wasn't as great there. And, I'm getting a lot of them, but I wish I would have got more because I need to make a lot of pickles. I got a lot of people asking me to buy them. And I usually end up selling all of my good pickles, leaving my family to eat the last year's supply. Last year's supply was pretty thin. So, I wish I would have got some more, but it is what it is. So we keep moving on. But my squash is going absolutely crazy right now. My whole hill down there is basically turned into Squash Hill. So that's pretty exciting. But a lot of fun to watch it all grow and be able to harvest everything in. Getting good green beans, stuff like that. Just your basics. Beets are doing well. So I'll be doing beets this weekend. So I might do a video of that. Anyhow, last week in the Walls of Freedom story, Major Vergis retrieved the group from the cabin in Montana. And they went and they boarded this train that's going back to Minnesota. So this week, we're going to follow the Moore family on this train trip. And they get to, have this experience where they're riding across the country and exploring, really watching just, how much society has changed since they've been away. So definitely was a difficult part for me to write and create, but I got a lot of, reward, a lot of fun doing it. So, and then as a super special treat today, I have the Survivalist Preppers, Dale and Lisa Goodwin, on the show today. And we're going to talk a little bit about construction methods and landscaping techniques that you can employ to keep your place a little bit safer. But you know how it goes with me and Dale and Lisa. We flew off on chasing a couple squirrels across the room. So we talk about a myriad of other topics as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that interview. It's going to be a lot of fun. My final piece today is not a survival tip, but a piece I did on North Korea. And listening to all the news media and that, and then remembering, my elders talking about, being veterans of the Korean War, really got me thinking about, I have to research this farther. I do Taekwondo, which is a Korean martial art. The Kukkiwon that, verifies all Olympic athletes is located in South Korea. I've done a lot of research on it before, but I haven't really researched the recent history as much. So went ahead and made this piece up, and I got a lot of benefit doing it because it just educated myself a lot in the history, which the news media is definitely not doing anything for us as far as that goes. They're just, I just see a lot of, back and forth, left said this, right said that, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's arguing. Nobody's looking at the history of it and what the real implications are. So I went ahead and did this piece, just kind of what could I find out and how could I begin researching the realities behind the conflict that's happening in North Korea. So I hope you stay tuned for that. Probably be a little bit longer show, but it's really going to be worth your time. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the Walls of Freedom story.
Chapter 28. Erica couldn't believe this was happening. She looked out the window with Daniel, staring in wonder as the city rolled by. It was a surprisingly beautiful place. Roofs laden with solar panels sat atop reconstructed buildings with some very unique architectural designs. Some appeared to be set in a sling supported by 4 posts. Others looked like crabs with legs. Each one of the buildings looked like capsules. "Look at those crazy houses, Sergeant Bennett," Erica exclaimed. "You're going to see a lot more of them pretty soon. That design is just starting to make it out here, but it's been pretty effective. Basically, the house could survive as a capsule, even if it falls. But the new designs try to suspend your home so that even if there are quakes, your pod stays steady," he explained. "There's still that many quakes happening?" Vince wondered. "Fewer and farther apart now, but they still remember the Great Quake," he replied. Erica stared out her window in wonder as her children in the adjoining cabin did the same. "This is so awesome, Dexter!" Star exclaimed. "I know we finally get to see Grandma and Grandpa," Dexter cheered. "How long has it been since you've seen them?" Corporal Avery wondered. 10 years, Dex mumbled. 10 years? That's back before the Great Quake, the corporal said, doing the math. "Haven't you been able to get across Region Pass before?" "Nope," was all Dex said, failing to elaborate. Sean had traveled this route more recently. He was thinking back to a small apartment his aunt had rented for them in Minneapolis. During the chaos, they fled the city and kept running west as the government patrolled for refugees. There was a final stop in Glendive before the sector divider. Erica kept wondering what this divider was until they came to a halt at a huge wall that split the countryside as far as the eye could see. "Holy great God Almighty, more walls!" Erica gasped. "The whole country is a gated community now, isn't it?" "And who built these?" Erica pondered their purpose. "The Walls of Freedom. That's what the landowners have nicknamed them. They keep everyone inside safe," Master Sergeant Bennett said sarcastically, laughing under his breath. "Who do you think built them?" he said rhetorically. He looked at Erica, but Vince answered, "The refugees." "How did you guess?" Bennett jested. "The walls keep idle hands busy, much like the water lines in Vegas. Plus, they ensure firm control and safety for the residents within the walls." Jack growled as the door handle turned and opened. When the young soldier entered and saw Master Sergeant Bennett, he snapped to attention and declared, "Safety inspection sweep, sir." "These 2 cabins are clear," he instructed, indicating the cabin that Star, Dex, and Sean were in. "Yes, sir," the young man said, promptly closing the door. Erica was so focused on the window, she hadn't even taken the time to notice how on edge Bennett was. He was obviously anxious about something. She contemplated asking him about it, but knew that if he thought she needed to know, he would tell her. It was such a relief to have him here, knowing she could trust him 100%. Gazing out the window, Erica watched the soldiers lining people up, checking paperwork and inspecting luggage. She was unsure what to make of this new world. "Boy, they sure are thorough, aren't they?" Vince commented, joining her and Daniel at the window. "You can say that again," she replied, turning her attention to the sight of him looking out the window. She leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. "What was that for?" he asked. "Because I love you," she replied. "I am so nervous. I can't wait to see your parents again." "We're finally free, Vince." She was giddy with excitement. "I know," he agreed, joining in with her positive energy. "It's been so long. For so many years, I doubted that they even made it out of Washington before the Great Quake. It's such an adventure, and this time, we aren't being hunted or shot at or worrying about our kids dying. One I am elated to have you by my side for." Erica sighed and hugged him closely, thinking of how close she had come to losing him as well. Before long, the train rolled on again. A handful of people were taken by the soldiers. Erica watched them with their heads bowed low, knowing the life that awaited them. "Don't worry about that, Cupcake," Bennett said, watching her look turn sorrowful. "We're going to change all that, remember?" Erica thought on his words as the countryside rolled by. What difference could I make in the middle of all this? She wondered. "One step at a time," Vince commented, watching the wheels spinning in her head. Beautifully cared for farms rolled by with people dotting the landscape, toiling at one task or another. The small towns were composed of more of the odd architecture that Erica had marveled at. It looked like various forms of capsule-style buildings all suspended in one way or another. Big buildings all had bases on springs and solar panels covered the rooftops. Bismarck, North Dakota was the biggest city they would pass before they got to Minnesota. The city was miraculous. The buildings glimmered in their solar panels, and huge wind turbines spun rapidly on their rooftops. Electric cars drove down the street. Markets abounded, and people all engaged in life filled the sidewalks. It's amazing, Erica marveled out the window. It sure is a different place, isn't it, Hopscotch? Bennett chuckled at her. Wow, Daniel exclaimed, joining her back at the window. It's so shiny. And look, more cars. Yup, maybe Dad can get a car again, Vince commented, the glory of the city illuminating all of their minds with possibilities. Did you see this place? Dexter said, bursting into their cabin. Isn't it cool? Star declared, hot on his heels with Sean behind her. What if it's all like this? Dexter wondered with a dreamy look in his eyes. Did you guys see the houses? Aren't they weird? Erica questioned. Yeah, like plastic capsules suspended in the air, Sean chimed in. The family chatted excitedly about the possibilities ahead of them in this new world. It was a new start, a second chance at life, where they were landowners with the freedom to enjoy life again. Their minds were supercharged with possibilities. Even Bennett seemed to relax a little, and it made the rest of the trip fly by. As they neared the town of Fargo, where they would be exiting the train, Master Sergeant Bennett's nervous energy returned. Erica just watched, quietly assessing what would happen next and stroking Jack, who was sitting next to her. The dog could sense the energy as well and started to pant quietly with anticipation. Erica watched Vince and Daniel sleeping peacefully across from her. She imagined them safe in a bright new future. Fargo was just as spectacular as Bismarck had been. It was a major northern hub in this new world. Cattle trains came and went, and markets exploded with goods to barter. I've been here before, Sergeant Bennett, Erica said quietly. None of it looked like this. Everything was destroyed, Erica. Even the lines we are traveling on all had to be stitched back together. All the cities were pretty much destroyed. Some were rebuilt, and some were returned back to farmlands. Actually, you've got to hand it to folks. They adapted and moved on. Hell yeah, they did, she replied. Well, it's been 10 years. What did you expect? He asked. I don't know. I mean, out there it's so, and in here it's so, she gestured grandly with her hands. Shitty and nice, he replied, filling in the gaps she had left. You've been in the Badlands. The government doesn't allot resources there. What about Montana? Erica was curious why the rebuild had not happened on this level out there. The western region has kind of got the shaft when it comes to resource allocations. Because of the lack of water and suitable farmlands, most of their funds get funneled to the cattle ranchers, he explained. We're almost there. Wake them up. I'm going to check on the others.
The Moore family is just going crazy as they experience this new countryside and get to see all the new building techniques that have been employed, because a lot of what used to remain is gone. And people that didn't think that an earthquake could ever touch them at their corner of the country got touched by the Great Quake. So when they were rebuilding, they thought a lot about this. One of the most interesting things that I've discovered during my research is after the Great Quake in San Francisco that happened, the wealthy people there didn't want people to focus on the fact that the earthquake had caused this disaster. They made it more about the fires that had burned down the city after the earthquake. So at first, they had employed all these new building methods, but the city wasn't getting rebuilt fast enough. Not only that, but what they did was they took the old city and pushed it out into the bay, and then they built on top of that. So after a while, the city wasn't getting built fast enough. They went and did away with a lot of the building codes and stuff for a long time, for a myriad of years. So 80% of San Francisco that exists today was built without building codes that conform to earthquake standards. And, I always thought when I was down there, all the buildings are safe. They have such rigorous building codes and whatnot. Well, that only happened in the past, couple of decades. So very interesting stuff. It just goes to show like what can happen when greed overpowers logical thinking. And I'm just a logical thinker. So I had my cities rebuild with these pods, with solar power, things like that they knew were going to last long into the future and be very beneficial. So here to talk to us today about some of the building procedures and the landscape that you can employ to have a safe zone around your house is Dale and Lisa Goodwin. Dale and Lisa Goodwin are the producers of the Survivalist Prepper podcast. It is a spectacular podcast I listen to just about every week. In early 2013, Lisa and Dale decided to create survivalistprepper.net and become a bigger part of the preparedness community. They are not the overboard, tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists. They're just like you and me, everyday Americans that enjoy freedoms that this country offers. Lisa is more of the prepper and Dale's more of the survivalist or the outdoor type, and they write articles ranging from first aid to food storage to primitive and wilderness skills. Basically anything that involves preparedness and survival. You can get a hold of Dale and Lisa at www.survivalistprepper.net. And over there on their website, they have the Academy as well. Really cool program that Dale puts together to get you on the preparedness trail. So definitely go check out Dale and Lisa at www.survivalistprepper.net. And let's go ahead and welcome Dale and Lisa to the show. Today, I am absolutely honored to have Dale and Lisa with me in person. Hi, Dale and Lisa. For all your podcasters, can't see Dale and Lisa, but my YouTubers can say hi and put the face together with the voices.
How you doing, Sarah?
Hey, Sarah.
I'm doing awesome today. It's hot, but we're doing good. So
we're down in our basement, so it's nice and chilly down here. It's almost too cold below ground, so it's kind of.
I'll get you a blanket. So.
Yeah, I know. Poor us, right?
Yeah, I'm feeling so bad. So. All right, so this week in the Walls of Freedom, the family's staring out the window of the train, and all this cool new architecture is going by that they've never seen before. So I designed these pod homes to exist in a world where we had a lot more earthquakes going on. And, I was thinking about my dishes and all my glass stuff and, all your little knickknacks and things you love. And every time your house gets hit, smash. These things are just getting smashed to oblivion. So I designed the pods as a way of preserving our stuff. If an earthquake were to happen, your house could just roll down the hill and you'd be A-okay. So I wanted to get together and talk with you guys about some of the designs we can employ nowadays and things we already have going on for not only earthquakes, but a myriad of natural disasters because they happen across our country, and we got to be prepared.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when I first heard about the little pod homes that you have in your book, and we don't know a lot about like earthquakes and stuff, but the first thing that kind of came to mind with me is, first of all, it's a cool idea. I don't know all the engineering that would have to go into it and, to make them actually work. But with earthquakes and stuff, I think and you would know more about this than we would, but there's a lot of stuff, like once you get the structure, a lot of stuff you have to do indoors, right? Making sure bookcases don't fall on you and crap like that.
Right. Yeah, we have to screw all our bookshelves to the wall and things like that. Well, we're supposed to by California law, but, up here in the foothills, we don't get as many. It's not as bad as like the Bay Area because of the fracture system of California. But yeah, so, your hot water heater has to be super secured over. You don't want to have an earthquake. The hot water heater falls, the gas line ruptures, that can turn bad really quick. So, yeah, definitely things like that have to be done on the inside.
Well, and that got me to kind of thinking about on the inside stuff, not necessarily building the house. I think that everybody these days, when you buy a house, it kind of is what it is.
Right.
I mean, they take all of that stuff into consideration, but the stuff that might be important is having the tools if, say, a disaster, say it's an earthquake or say it's a tornado or, something like that, having the tools to be able to maybe help people or dig yourself out, shovels, axes, all of that different stuff. Having the stuff inside your house to be able to kind of do things afterwards, I suppose, right?
Fair enough.
To
Yeah.
do, you can't maintain it, but yeah, afterwards you're going to have to, who knows if somebody's trapped.
Well, I was gonna say, that would be kind of cool too, because since we live like in Colorado and there's lots of snow, all the people go skiing in the wintertime. A lot of times the backcountry skiers, they have the little avalanche beacons so that if they're in an
Right.
avalanche, it will go off. I mean, you could almost use the same type of a beacon, like if you are in an earthquake prone area or something, so that if something did happen and you're under that rubble, hopefully you're still alive, number one.
Right.
But that they could, maybe they could use that to track people and find them.
Well, if you were coherent enough, say if it had I don't know if they make these or not. I mean, it's got a button you push and it's an alert, sends
Like
out
the
an alert.
life alert. Yeah.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah.
wanted that we're sending help immediately, Mrs. Fletcher.
Yeah.
That's right. You are number 2025.
Yeah,
with you
in line.
3 weeks.
Best to get a good book at this point.
Yeah.
So,
But if you're
one
if you're
of the-
coherent enough to push the button, I think the odds are somebody needs to come get you.
Yeah.
Unless you just fell on the button, everything collapsed on you, and then the button got pushed. And
Well, there
They-
was that story in Italy last year or the year before, where there was the earthquake, and then it destroyed one of the hotels, and an avalanche came down and crushed the hotel on top of that. So it's like, and they weren't sending people up. They're like, "Hello, we need help," and they didn't send people for like 2 weeks or something to like get them in
Really?
there. Yeah, it was pretty serious. And so I was like, okay, that's the kind of situation where, like, if you had a structure that could survive that kind of thing, then you'd be much better off than some of our traditional building implements. And with the pods, I even thought, well, maybe they could float too. So, like, if you did have a hurricane or whatever, your pod's like floating out.
yeah,
Good.
no kidding. Just make them waterproof, and then if that happens, and all of a sudden you wake up and you're floating down a river.
Yeah, and it wouldn't matter what you ran into or anything. You could kind of look out the window and be like, "All right, well, we're fine, we're good."
Like a beach ball kind of.
You can open up the sunroof and just get your tan out there.
Yeah.
Put up your flag. We need help. Tow us in. No, I don't know, but I thought, there's got to be, we've evolved so many other ways. And really one of my basic principles is how arrogant of us to think that the earth is not going to change again. And then we're still living in these structures that are kind of archaic if you think about like how far we've come with so many other technologies.
Yeah. Well, and kind of at the same time too, like some of these structures that are still around from thousands of years ago. I think that the Chinese have some buildings they have a lot of earthquakes there, so their architecture and stuff was built to withstand some earthquakes, and it's
Right.
pretty ingenious what some of these people did. But at the same time, like you said, this is Mother Earth, and she can do whatever she wants. So we kind of just have to pivot and weave and figure out if we have to pick up and move somewhere else or figure out what
right.
we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just watching an Ancient Aliens on that. You'll appreciate that, Lisa. And so some of this building in India, that they used this concrete that was like way better than our concrete. It's lasted just thousands of years, tens of thousands, I think. And they had like one ripple in the staircase from an earthquake, and that was it.
And then the new guys came and they were like, well, this can't be good because
Right.
it's so old. So our concrete is so much better. And I mean, that glue or whatever they were making, I mean, it, like you said, it's proven to be better because it's lasted this long of a time.
Right, they're like,
Yeah.
what did those people used to know? Yep, they knew a lot.
They knew a lot. Yeah, apparently. And maybe we could learn from them instead of,
Right.
thinking we know everything.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you that there is a way. We don't have to be rocket scientists or engineers or anything like that. As long as, we have some of the skills and stuff, there's a way to do this stuff. You don't have to, I guess it would help to be this big building company or whatever. But the point is, there's ways to do it as long as you just kind of think about it. Stuff they did. I'm sure these guys were around for a couple thousand years. So I'm sure they had a little bit of time, trial and error, and practice to get all this stuff right.
Right.
But
And get it all
it's
written
possible.
down.
Yeah, you don't need all the modern stuff to get it done. Granted, some of it makes it a little bit better, but anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on the learn from the old dudes.
Yeah.
The
That's
dudes
what I
that
would say.
aren't around.
That's what I would say. So let's talk a little bit of like specifics. So in a tornado, of course, you'd want to have your bunker area. Even when we were driving through Kansas, we noticed that a lot of the rest stops were like the solid concrete blocks that are like, this is a survival station or whatever. And I'm like, ooh, I'm home.
Yeah.
Because like we'll have even and I think people need to keep that in mind depending on which area of the world or country that you live in. If you do live in a tornado prone area, you need to have either a basement or a room with no windows in it. Right. And even at where I work in an office building made of glass, believe it or not, we have tornado rooms, tornado shelters that we're supposed to bring everybody in, and we have tornado drills where we practice bringing people that are injured into these little tiny rooms. But it's just learning what is, what are you at risk for? So, for example, like where we live, we're at risk of wildfires, and like you are too.
Right. Yep.
So, sometimes we don't have the opportunity to build something that's completely fireproof, but we can do what we can with what we have to make it more fire retardant, fire resistant. Things like fire mitigation, instead of using bark for decorative landscaping around your home, which a lot of people do, maybe consider using rocks. And if you do have lots of pine trees or tall grasses, you really need to make sure that you trim those trees. What do they say? 5 feet from the base of the tree, so that the fire can't jump from the grass up into the tree. Right. And so even though we don't, we may not have all of, in a perfect world where we had everything like your pods, because those are amazing, but we kind of have to work around where we are and the situation we find ourselves in currently to make it so that we're going to be okay.
Right. Yeah. We talk a lot about food storage too. And, because you invest a lot of money into food storage.
Oh, yeah.
And then to have a wildfire come through and rip, just take your whole house out. Well, try and go to claim that to your insurance company.
Right.
Oh, well,
right.
we had $4,000 worth of food storage, and they'll be laughing at you. Like,
yeah. They'll be like, right.
Yeah,
nobody
right.
does.
And like a $10,000 coin collection, right? And, So, so we've talked a lot about physically, like even if you're just burying the Rubbermaid containers and things like that, to physically go and bury them in the yard, as opposed to even keeping them in your house. Because if your whole house gets wiped out, you could bury those Rubbermaids a couple feet down, and if the whole top burns, chances are that it's not going to get through the ground that deep to have wiped out your whole food stash. So.
And the cool thing about a fire, and I guess there's not really much cool about a fire, is you have a little bit of time to be able to do something like that. So you really don't, I guess you could bury some stuff, but if you have, say the fire's getting close to your house and you've got an evacuation warning, I forget which is you need to get out now, and you have a little bit of time.
When it's an evacuation, you have 10 minutes to get out. The fire is potentially going to be there in 10 minutes.
So a notice would be, hey, you're on the list, you might be evacuating.
Yeah.
If you're on if you were on that, you could maybe start digging some holes and start, thinking about that stuff, because there's only so much you can pack in your car.
I'd want to think about it way before I was on that list.
Yeah.
Like, no way I would be out there. Oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah. That's kind of what we all do anyways. We're pre-planning so we can do other stuff while everybody's digging their holes.
Exactly, because it is like that. Around here, if you get the notice, it's like, get the heck out now.
Yeah, you should have left an hour ago if you got the notice.
Right, or it just started and now it's on your doorstep. So
yes.
You have the decision, so.
Kind of along the same lines as a fire, I guess, post-fire anyway, and even floods and stuff like that, is the stuff you grow, the landscaping and everything, that can help, like if you're in a floodplain or something like that, if you don't have anything planted, or, like trees that have roots and stuff like that, that's why after fires, floods are a big deal, because everything just burns down and there's nothing left, and all that topsoil just kind of goes rolling where it
Mudslide.
wants to go.
Mhm.
Yeah.
California wintertime.
Yeah. So, planting trees and stuff like that, maybe, not good for fire mitigation as long as they're alive and it's cleaned up. But that would help if you are, in a floodplain or something like that, or concerned that something like that might happen, flash flooding, stuff like that.
Well, that's seriously what happened to us out here. We had so many years of drought that our forests really took it on the chin. So if you look out at my hillside, because we're like in the mountains, you can see all these dead spots of dead. So when the wildfires come through, they hit those areas and just, are just out of control. So that's a big problem. Like it compounds itself, and nobody really thinks about that in the drought of the future consequences that drought was going to have on the state. And we're figuring out.
And that's kind of a lot of things with preparedness. You can't really focus on like an economic collapse or this or that because there's consequences to all of this different stuff,
right?
Or repercussions, like dominoes is what I kind of refer to it as. Is one thing might happen, but what happens to all that stuff down the line? And the same with the natural disaster. Yeah, you've got to survive the tornado, you've got to survive the earthquake, but what after that? There's a lot after that,
right.
Depending on the size of the earthquake, how big, what type of scale are you looking at, as far as damage and destruction and stuff. And there's just a lot to think about. It's
That's
not
what
just...
I always say too. Like, do you want to be the one walking down the street with your garbage bag full of stuff? Like,
yeah.
That's what you want to be? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not me.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we got too much stuff to do that.
Right?
Well,
Exactly.
and that kind of brings up something else too, is that in a bug out situation, shelter is going to be a huge deal, and you kind of have to take, like, especially like the flooding and stuff. You don't want to build you don't want to set up camp right next to a river or something like that. It could flash flood. You don't want to be on the side of a mountain where if it starts raining, you've got everything coming down at you, and you're just gonna get soaked out and run out. Yeah, you don't want to be putting up camp right next to a bear den or something like that.
Even in the high desert, how many times do we hear about people that die in flash floods in the high desert because they threw their camp up, didn't realize it was raining up in the mountains, and it comes in and takes them out. So
yeah,
definitely
and it
something.
doesn't happen very often, but when it goes through that little, say, canyon or whatever,
Yep.
yeah, it goes through.
Yep. And if you're there, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, you're down hiking in caves or whatever, and then all of a sudden, you're not getting out.
No, now you're in like this gorge.
breath.
So one of the other topics that I really kind of wanted to touch on was people store, like they tout like, oh, my wall opens up and it's all food storage, and then they like close the wall and you can't see it anymore. And so first of all, my problem is product rotation. Like, are you making sure you're rotating? What if you get one weevil and that whole wall? Everything's gone, right? So, first of all, there's my problem. But second of all, like, something happens to your house, then what? I mean, you're putting a lot of stock in there.
Well, and that's kind of a problem that we all have with a lot of things, because this is our warehouse.
Right.
So I guess that goes into not just like natural disasters and stuff, but security and all sorts of different things that we have to take into account, that this is where our stuff is. And if you store it wrong in your house, say you put something in the garage and it floods, you've got food on the ground. I mean, there's just a lot of different things. And like you were talking,
sugar bags out there, and now they're all wet,
Yeah, or like you were talking about, even if it's just stuffed in the back of a closet or something, you've got all this stuff in there, and you mark off on your list, hey, I got this, I'm cool with this, I got this, and then something happens, you go and look at it, and it's expired by 40 years, or, well, that'd be a long time.
That'd be a really long time.
But you know what I mean.
No.
Or mice and stuff have gotten into it, and it's just unedible.
Or if you have teenagers and your teenagers found your food storage and they really like the brownie mix or whatever it is that you got, and you think you have it.
You got a bunch of spaghetti or something.
Yeah, and then you go in there and it's all gone.
Oh, man, I bought my son SpaghettiOs. Like, oh, God, they're so horrible. I used to love those things.
I did too.
I'm just like, oh, how did I ever, like this?
Do you think it's because we actually are eating better and we're eating real food, like real
I think it's
food?
because grown my own tomatoes and processed
Right.
my own stuff for so long that to eat that tomato, like, it just
It's
tastes
just
so
not the same.
processed.
With
No.
me,
Yeah.
it's because I like to cook, so I'm trying different stuff, and I think as adults you get that a better taste in your taste or whatever. Whereas kids, it's like whatever mom feeds, and SpaghettiOs are like, I'm not sure about what mom's gonna cook tonight, so I'll just have some
I'll just
spaghetti.
eat the SpaghettiOs.
Well, but
Yeah,
even like yesterday,
she's gonna make me broccoli.
we went out to lunch yesterday, and it was an Italian restaurant, and I was like, okay, this sounds really good. And then we got it, and I'm going, our food from home is better
Way better.
than what it is in the restaurant.
I'm
Yeah.
having a big problem with that because I can like make stuff way better than most of the restaurants.
Right.
I'm like, I just
Yeah.
paid like $10 for this hamburger that they just took
Yeah.
out of the freezer. I'm like,
Yeah.
I was at this party yesterday and it was at these homesteaders' house and it was like the alpaca goat venison burger. Oh my
Oh,
God,
that's
it was
good.
so good.
Wow.
I was
Yeah.
like, it was so juicy and so yummy. They're like, yeah, it's the mystery meat. I'm like, ha 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 ha. Oh wow.
No.
I like mystery meat. This is good. So yeah, alpaca. Who knew? You know, but it's pretty good stuff.
That's awesome.
I always wondered what alpacas were for other than their fur. So
Well, they
Hey,
use
what
them a
hap-
lot down south. I mean, they're pack animals, like down in the mountains of South
Are they?
America. They're pack animals and food source, and yeah, it's like the
we've got a
camel.
couple people out here that are alpaca farmers. They've got like 10 or 12 of them, and I mean, they still have 10 or 12, so they're not using them for meat.
No, a
So
lot of people don't
you
think
prefer-
of eating them, you know, and I've
Yeah.
never really heard about it before either. And then I was like, oh, okay, like
Yeah.
I eat all
That's
kinds
right.
of stuff. I've tried squirrel and like.
As long as it's not a pet, dogs, horses,
Well,
anything
none of
like
the
that. then-
animals are, you know. Everything that's on the farm is there for a reason. It gets eaten,
Yeah.
so it's pretty cool little setup, but a lot of fun. But I was like, wow, this is interesting. Okay, so. All right, and then probably the last threat that we kind of need to look at. Did you guys hear that there was like a huge earthquake in Montana or in the area of Yellowstone?
Yes, that freaked me out. I was like, oh, here we go. Here's the caldera. Oh crap.
Right. So
Yeah. That's a huge deal. if that
Huge
happens.
deal.
That's global type.
yeah, that's like lights down for a long, like 3 years, I believe they said it would shroud the sun. So that would
Well,
be.
with us being in Colorado, I don't know how bad that would affect us, but I
It
assume it
depends.
would be
It depends.
horrible.
Depends on which direction. Like if we
The
got
The
wind
winds.
blows.
yeah, the winds if they're because then that could take the ash cloud and I mean right through the growing belt of the United States.
Right.
And it's like, okay, bye-bye food.
Well, and then it would expand. I don't know how much, but it would expand over the globe.
globally,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it could block out the sun and raise the temperature a little bit. It wouldn't take much. And then all of a sudden the growing seasons are really
There's
short.
no growing season.
No
Yeah.
growing season. Yep. And some hellacious
Well, I'm sure
winter.
they're, like
That
by
was the
the
little
equator,
ice
it
age.
might be a couple months, but
Well, it depends on what I mean, there's
How-
just so many variables.
mhm.
Then yeah, it could be like an ice age,
Right.
and then we're all
But,
hosed.
the little ice age that hit Europe was caused when Krakatoa erupted.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
on
Yeah.
its last time. So Indonesia was pretty much screwed, and then the
Mm-hmm.
global effects was really bad. Really good for the potato though, because the potato got
Yeah.
shipped across the globe, and it's what saved Europe.
Yeah.
France wouldn't eat the potato. They believed it was like the devil's food, and they got screwed because of it because they couldn't grow anything else at that point. So yeah, something to think about there. As
I'd
far
be
as
eating
goes.
anything. If I was starving and it was a root or whatever, and somebody
Right.
told me it's edible, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, no, that was actually like the trigger behind the French Revolution and all that, because they wouldn't eat potatoes. They were all starving.
That's
Really
crazy.
interesting piece of
There's-
history, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Their beliefs back then were, we're a little bit more educated. I don't want to say smarter than they were back then because we think we're smarter than we really are, but
yeah.
we know more, I suppose, about all that stuff. So yeah, we know a potato, it's not,
Potato.
potato's not the devil.
Potato. It's good. Out here, though, I would have my ground squirrels eating them all. Oh.
Yes, because we've planted them before, and they did okay. They didn't do great, but that's what I was worried about is the ground squirrels and things. Thankfully, nothing found them, but they would.
Yeah,
Once
we
they
did
do-
like super good one year, so we planted tons of potatoes the next year. Gopher came through. The gopher, not a ground squirrel, but a gopher actually came in, and they ate them all. Or they took one bite out of it. Anything we did find at least had a bite out of it. We were just like, oh, I was crying in my garden. I'm like, this is
Once they
horrible.
find it, it's like their refrigerator. They'll go back next year.
Well, and
Leave it more.
that's something to think about. So then, if we are planting our own gardens, if there is no, the grocery stores are empty, whatever, and we're planting our own gardens and we're expecting this bountiful harvest, and something happens, grasshoppers, locusts, ground squirrels, gophers,
Yep.
drought, and then you have no harvest.
Even
then,
just for me, I think about watering. How
Yes.
do you even just water your garden? Right?
Yes.
If you don't
Yeah.
have a solar pump going, or you don't have something like that, can be a
Right.
huge challenge in itself. So, yeah, if anybody's like, yeah, I'm just gonna be out there like planting my garden, good luck.
Yeah.
But first, you got to take care of yourself. Make
Right.
sure you have the water to survive, and then you can think about, putting
Exactly.
it in the ground,
Right.
Exactly. For some plants.
doing your little rain dance like the Indians used to do. Rain.
I'm gonna try that. I'll try that and we'll see how it goes.
I'll get a video and we'll show it to everybody.
Okay.
We'll do
You
that.
just
All
look
right.
like a big giant moron out here in California. Rain dance! I've been doing it for 3 months. My son looked out at the window today and he's like, Mom, the sky looks different today. And I'm like, yeah, those are called clouds, son. I know we don't see them very often, but that's what they look like. It's not smoke. It's literally clouds. Yeah. Okay, so that kind of, touches on it. Definitely people have to just be aware of what's going on in their area. I can't really give a fallback for like what would happen if we had a volcanic eruption, because even if you did have an indoor system where you were able to grow your own food and do all that, that ash comes in through all of your ventilation systems and it gets into everything and shuts everything down. So
Yeah, and if you had solar or anything like that, that's done.
yep, it's all coated.
Maybe wind, maybe water, but yeah, it would cause a lot of problems.
And then heaven forbid if it rained on top of that volcanic ash, then it turns into like that concrete muck.
Yeah. Rivers of mud and you're breathing all this stuff in, and there's just a lot of.
This is bad. This is bad all the way around.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's one of those things nobody really prepares for, because, what are the odds, that the Yellowstone volcano erupts or whatever they're called there, in the next 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years? We don't know. But when it does,
and really at that point, what are you really going to be able to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Not a thing.
That's why I'm saying, like, even if you have an underground bunker and you're like, yeah, I'm going to survive in this underground bunker, which I would never do. I'd rather just die than be in the ground for any long period of time.
Be stuck in that confined area with your family. As much as you love them, it would get
I would kill
being
everybody.
Lisa, maybe, but you put the kids in the equation, and I love them to death, but holy crap,
It'd be like Sarah, ring.
Yeah.
They open it up.
I'd end up having to leave and chance it on my own, because if I didn't, I'd end up killing somebody.
Yeah. But those things have to breathe too. And you have to have water source, even if it's an underground one, and they have to breathe somehow. There's got to be some kind of vent somewhere, and you're going to be clogged.
Yeah, and even if you have the good filters, who knows how clogged and how quickly those get clogged up just from the dust and all that stuff. So I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough of preparing for volcanic eruptions. I haven't really looked into that enough to know what's possible and what's not. But I guess if you're really worried about it, you probably could.
Yeah, so if you're like in Montana, or you're going to start thinking about that one.
Yeah.
Going for I guess they do. I don't know if they have fully isolated units that go underground. Like if you could do a fully isolated unit that not reliant upon an air intake system at all. So I don't know.
I bet you like NORAD and stuff, they probably have something like that. Big old, government facilities underground.
The one percenters probably do.
I don't know how.
You guys got to get over to the Rockies or whatever. What's it, Crystal Peaks or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, we could start digging a hole going up to, what is the mountain? Cheyenne Mountain?
Cheyenne Mountain.
Right.
Just start now, just dig a hole, and eventually maybe we'll get inside. Of course, we'll hit a big 13-foot concrete wall.
Yeah.
But we'll figure it out.
We'll get there.
With the jackhammer. Outside the wall. No, you'll get into the underground alien system first.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, when the aliens come, I'm going to tell you I told you so.
Go for it. Because you'll have about 2 seconds before it's like, and then
I
we're
know,
all.
that's what I always laugh about. I'm like, yeah, right. Like humans would ever stand a chance. We'd be like,
No. Yeah. Be gone.
they'd be like, here's a germ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be like somebody stepping on an ant. If they've got the technology to get all the way across the universe or the solar system, whatever.
It's a wormhole that they
probably
use.
Don't want to visit.
If they have that technology and we can get to the moon, we're screwed.
Yeah.
So,
But I will say it just so. Just once.
Okay.
So let's wrap this one up on a personal note. My son, Fletcher, wants tinfoil hat time back. He's like,
all right.
Yeah,
we
he's like,
did it.
where's tinfoil hat time?
Yeah, we've been slacking a little bit.
Oh, but I have a
months.
really good one that we're going to talk about in our next podcast.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Well, they'll have to listen to our podcast to find out.
Yep.
I remember what I watched on TV the other night, and I was flipping out. Oh my gosh, Sarah, this is awesome. I'll have to tell you about this off the camera.
Okay.
But remember?
Has to do with space, right?
It has to do with aliens and the guy in Colorado.
Oh, that. Okay.
Yeah, it was.
eye roll from Dale.
Got it.
Yep. So we will be talking about tinfoil hat time aliens.
That would be an
always like, he's like, what? Where's tinfoil hat time? I'm like, dude, sometimes the show goes too long. They don't do tinfoil hat.
Yeah, we've been slacking, and there's a lot of people, not just him, that actually like it. So we need to, we need to make sure and do that.
Yeah, Dale.
We'll let you talk about your damn aliens.
Yeah.
All right, so for all the listeners out there, you want to hear more of Dale and Lisa, you got to get over to survivalistprepper.net. They got some super cool stuff going on over there. That you guys got the Academy and all the great material that you have for all your listeners and viewers and stuff. So you guys are rocking it, and everybody's got to get over there and check you out.
Yep, absolutely. That would be great for us and for you.
And for me, because we all live together, just feed each other.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Alrighty, guys. Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right. Thanks so much, Dale and Lisa, for coming on the show. Any excuse that I get to have a conversation with you, I'm definitely going to jump all over it. It's always my pleasure to host you and just get together and have a good time. So thanks for doing that. Appreciate it. And I can't wait to see you again later on in the season. So now I want to present this piece that I wrote. And I labeled it North Korea, the country World War II left behind. And you're going to understand why in a minute. So the news of our conflict with North Korea seems to be inescapable. It's everywhere. The Korean threat, what's going on. Trump said this, Kim said that. Can't believe they were saying these things. So we've been hearing a lot of the back and forth. And the media just seems to be just jamming it down our throat right now. So everywhere you go, people are discussing the rising tensions and asking how concerned you are about the threat. The news media is portraying this interaction between the U.S. and North Korea like it's a new problem, like it's something that just magically popped up in these recent years. But that's not true at all. I remember my elders being veterans of the Korean War. I never really understood what it was about. I understood that South Korea was democratic and North Korea was communistic, and they were constantly butting heads, but I never really understood the North Korean conflict and where our role in that is. For me, and I think it's very applicable, when you know the history of something, you can be a better judge of the future of something. So when I Google North Korean threat, Google displays the top stories, and they're just packed with these negative fear-mongering news. What this person said, that person said, they do very little to explain the background history, the underlying causes possible solutions that we have to go ahead and handle that. So the headlines were Tillerson dials back the rhetoric after Trump's North Korean fire and fury, and even Trump to have said that. I mean, I'm glad that he's taking a stand, a really hard stand. It's been a long time since we had a president that stood up for the United States of America. But also, why make things worse, kind of? But when it comes down to it, I wasn't really interested in a right versus left argument. I don't want to know how the left thinks that Trump's so incompetent, or how the right feels that the lefts are so socially inept. I wanted to know the reasons behind the tension. How did we end up here, and what can our countries do to get out of this without creating a problem? So I Googled the North Korean conflict, and I got a lot better results. They weren't as spectacularly enticing, but, a lot more informative. And I have to say, personally, thank God for whoever developed Wikipedia, because I know that it's an open source. You have to go and fact check the information. I understood that, but at least they're out there trying to teach people things, history, and about, what things are. And it's an easy access, and it ranks up there in Google, so you can get to the information that you want. Now, whether that's written by, somebody with a leftist point of view or a right point of view, you have to be the judge of that. That's called personal decision. So I definitely love it. Went there, started there, and got some great information. So for me, I feel that the average American that's under 50 probably has no idea about the Korean War, how this started, and what this is all about. So this conflict is based on the division of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in the north and the Republic of Korea in the south, both of which claim to govern the entire country. The division's not always been that way, though. Korea has been invaded multiple times in its history. It's kind of the little guy on the block, and China's invaded it, Japan's invaded it, and it was just annexed from the Japanese Empire in 1910. And they couldn't really, between then and the end of World War II, they couldn't really determine a government who was going to lead. They couldn't unite their country in a fortified way. So on August 9th of 1945, in the closing days of World War II, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan, and they marched into Korea. The Allied forces said that was okay. We actually had the Yalta Conference, and we said that was okay, but we were concerned about Soviet control over all of Korea. So the U.S. ordered the Soviets to stop their invasion at the 38th parallel north, which is still the line today. The U.S. would occupy the south, and the Soviets would occupy the north. So originally, the plan was to hand this country back to the Koreans and let them create this united government and bring their country back together. That was the goal everybody wanted: the North, the South, the United States, and the Soviets. But then tensions rose as we entered the Cold War with the Soviets. So both sides favored rulers that reflected their geopolitical points of view. The South went more democratic, the North went more communistic, and actually the rival leaders in both countries were actually assassinated at that time. So even before the Korean War began, there were all kinds of uprisings in both countries. And in South Korea, there were communistic uprisings in favor of communism, and these were brutally, brutally suppressed. Over 100,000 people died in South Korea before the Korean War even began. So time kept pressing on with these two sides just kind of staring at each other. And in 1950, North Korea's military was clearly superior over the South. They were armed and trained by the Soviets. They had battle-tested troops that returned from the Chinese Civil War. They had allies in the South that they hoped would rise up in favor of communism. And they were hopeful that the U.S. and the Western forces would not intervene in what is a civil war, North versus South. There are families on either side of the lines. This is a civil war. So they didn't think that the U.S. and the West would get involved. But the West didn't see it as a civil war. They saw it as communism advancing its hold on the planet. So we moved in with the United Nations force to go ahead and help the South out. We were doing really good. We had the North push all the way up almost to the Chinese border. The Chinese didn't like that. They joined in the war and pushed back. And we finally decided on the 38th parallel as the line that still holds today, an armistice was signed, and it ended the firing between the two sides. Now, armistice is an important word because armistice does not mean peace treaty. Technically, we are still at war with North Korea right now. The original armistice itself was a very delicate procedure to handle. The South wasn't even happy with it. The ruler, I'm going to mispronounce his name, even though I should know it pretty well because I speak a lot of Korean and Taekwondo, but Syngman Rhee, he opposed the treaty because it left the country divided. It didn't make the unity that they wanted. And he actually never signed that armistice. He just agreed to abide by it. So North Korea has broke it many times over the past years. And, it's just kind of the ceasefire that exists right now. So when the war ended, South Korea signed defense treaties with the U.S. and North Korea signed defense treaties with China and what was the USSR at that time. So I know that we still have forces in South Korea. I don't know how tight those defense treaties are with China and USSR right now. North Korea promoted itself as a practitioner of orthodox communism and adapted the doctrine of Juche, or self-reliance with extreme military mobilization. They made an extensive network of underground fallout facilities, and even Pyongyang's metro can double as a fallout shelter should an enemy decide to go nuclear. So I just thought it was cool to include that part because, for a country who is very communistic and has some really hard knock lives, they certainly did do their part to set up these fallout shelters and stuff, which is a little bit more than I can say for the United States. Most of us are going, well, what the heck would we do? And it's private investment that's doing that. So that's, that's capitalism versus communism. You have the private industry that's going to invest in that, or you have the public industry that's going to invest in that. So I just thought that was a little bit of an interesting point. So from 1960 to 1987, the conflicts between these two countries have basically manifested in military staging on either side, military raids into each other's country, and even assassination attempts on the leaders of both countries. So when the Cold War finally ended, North Korea lost the support of the USSR. They were transitioning into Russia. The USSR was being dissolved, and it plunged North Korea into economic crisis. At the same time as that was happening, the North Korean leader, Kim Il-sung, died. And this collapse of the USSR and of what was going on in North Korea, and then their leader died, it seemed like blending the countries was imminent. Like we could finally do that, and reunification was going to be possible. So in 1998, South Korean President Kim Dae-jung initiated the Sunshine Policy to form better relations with North Korea. But that's right when the U.S. got hit by 9/11. And President Bush was still reeling from what happened in 9/11. And he declared that North Korea was an axis of evil and the Sunshine Policy was terminated. So a lot of people go back and forth over what Bush said. Should he have gone for unity at that point or, held firm? And that's a personal decision for you to make in your own head. But for me, in my opinion, Bush was not inaccurate in saying that North Korea is an axis of evil. They are committing some of the greatest human rights atrocities on our planet. If you basically make the government angry in North Korea, you dying is the easy way out. Your family will be imprisoned in concentration camps for 3 generations out. So there's some horrific stories that come out of North Korea. People are desperately trying to escape. They're fearful for their life. They don't know about the internet. They live on the edge of this existence. So, on the human rights side, you just can't believe that this evil would be allowed to exist in our world the way it is today. But then on the other hand, learning the background makes you kind of understand how they ended up in the position they're in, at least. So North Korea's rigid North Korea was rigid in their beliefs and they were left alone. Their culture of self-reliance and military might caused them to think of a new plan for survival, one that included nuclear capabilities at an intercontinental level. Fearful of the potential death count both in North Korea and South Korea from a North Korean counterattack, the United Nations and the United States have not bombed these nuclear facilities. North Korea announced nuclear capabilities in 2006, and military interaction has mostly been sea-based from 1994 to 2013. Seoul is a huge, huge city. North Korea can wipe it out within 24 hours. And then Tokyo is just an arm's throw away, and there are something like 40 million people. There's a lot of people there. Plus, we have troops stationed in Okinawa and in South Korea. So a lot of human life is on the line if we decide to go in and attack North Korea. They can wipe out Seoul within 24 hours. I mean, it's just crazy terms. And nuclear is not the only weapon that they have. They have a lot of other chemical weapons and things like that they're more than willing to use. So the situation here, there's no easy answer, and we have to tread very lightly. So North Korea has always been this very military active country. So why did the tension suddenly increase? So contrary to popular belief, it was not Donald Trump, although his brash methodology has been put into question. North Korea is now nuclear capable and possesses ICBMs, or intercontinental ballistic missiles. They've been actively testing and perfecting this technology. So what they're trying to do is make their nuclear technology smaller and smaller so it can fit inside this missile and they can touch anywhere in the world if they wanted to. So what will they do with it is the question. This dedication to developing nuclear weapons has made many countries in the rest of the world uncomfortable, especially the U.S., their long-standing adversary. North Korea's policy of communistic self-sufficiency has already crippled the country in a global economic environment, and the recent sanctions employed by the UN will only make life in North Korea all that more difficult. So South Korea has also had its own problems in the past year. The leader was removed by the court and imprisoned on collusion charges. North Korea did its best to influence the outcome of the new vote, and Moon Jae-in, a liberal human rights lawyer, has been elected. He's rethinking the deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, the THAAD system that we have deployed, and would very much like to improve relations with North Korea. So now that we know how this conflict started and its historic influences, the next logical question is what will happen next? The United States has a few options according to theglobeandmail.com. I really like this site. It's a Canadian site, but very nonpartisan and just kind of gives you the facts, the nitty gritty. So they state in their article, North Korea's missiles, what happened so far and what could happen next, that Mr. Trump has played his hand, militarily at least, as cautiously as his predecessors. His options appear to be limited. So we have the economic sanctions. We've been trying economic sanctions for years. North Korea is very self-sufficient. That's one of the things they pride themselves on. So the economic sanctions don't have as much effect on the country. They're not really in the global economy, so it doesn't really affect them as much, although the coal and the oil that comes out of North Korea is kind of their mainstay. So I know that these economic sanctions are thwarting that and putting penalties on Chinese banks for doing business with them, and China's agreed to that. So we've already been covertly operating. We have a system that they employed to hamper Iran's nuclear factories, and we've employed that on North Korea. It hasn't seemed to work. Their success rate with their missiles isn't very high. So it's questionable whether we haven't been trying to mess cyberly with the missiles themselves. But, nobody really has an answer on that. That's kind of the tinfoil hat time of what are they doing? What technology do they have? And of course, they don't want everybody to know it because then we wouldn't be able to use it. So diplomatic relations is always a good option. But between the U.S. and North Korea, it is non-existent. They will not talk to each other. So Andrei Lankoff, professor at Kumin University, Seoul, and director of the NK News, said that there is very little probability of conflict. But North Koreans are not interested in diplomacy. They want to get the ability to wipe out Chicago from the map first, and then they will be interested in diplomatic solutions. They will get such capability within a couple of years. So that quote is from theguardian.com, and it's from an article called North Korea versus US, How Likely is War? So I really wanted to include that quote because this is what Kim Jong-un wants. He wants to be able to stand and say, I am military capable too. Now you have to deal with me. And he can turn around and say to his people, look, I can protect you. So the final option that we have is military force. This article that was in theglobeandmail.com suggests that the military force could come in the form of a sea blockade or cruise missile strikes or a broader campaign overthrow camp. So as I mentioned before, nuclear is only kind of the tip of the iceberg. It's only kind of the icing on the cake for North Korea. They have a lot of other options, and they have a lot of places that have a large population that they could hit very quickly with these weapons. So militarily, the counterstrike is what you have to fear. So how hard do you have to go in there? It's really going to be a dicey situation, and I don't think that any leader has a good answer for it at this time. China's trying desperately to avoid a conflict. They've called for renewed peace talks. The last one ended in 2009 with Kim Jong-un's father. We haven't talked since then. China's called for North Korean denuclearization, of course, and that's why they agreed to the sanctions. And they're really scared of this conflict because they foresee a conflict that would lead to thousands of Korean refugees flooding into China. And they already have a big population there. They've been dealing with the drought. They've been dealing with lots of different issues. So the last thing they need right now is a large migration of people on the move. So that's really what they're trying to avoid. So will the sanctions and the international pressure work? As Andrei Lankov stated, very few who study inter-Korean relations believe they will. Kim Jong-un has watched other dictators like Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein be ousted, and he hopes that possession of a nuclear weapon will lead to a different future for himself. John Lee, Wilson Center Fellow, former AP Pyongyang Bureau Chief, said that no one in this region, not even North Korea, wants another war. But Kim Jong-un is going to push it as far as he can to get what he wants. Recognition from the United States that North Korea is a nuclear power, and legitimacy at home as a ruler who can defend his people against the big bad U.S. Furthering this opinion, Ji Yong-song, leader in senior lecturer in Korean Studies, University of Melbourne, said they will exchange some harsh words for a while until Washington talks secretly or publicly with Pyongyang. Kim Jong-un will keep test firing. There is no military solution to the North Korean problem. North Korea wants to be recognized as a legitimate nuclear state by the U.S. and establish diplomatic relations with the U.S., constantly reminding the world, and especially the U.S., of their nuclear and missile capabilities is part of their regime's survival calculations. All options are on the table for Pyongyang, and North Korea did propose peace talks with the U.S. a number of times to end the 1953 armistice and replace it with a peace treaty. What North Korea is also trying to do is to break the South Korea-U.S. alliance and undermine the new South Korean President Moon Jae-in's initiatives for improved inter-Korean relations. He's proposed numerous talks with North Korea, and Pyongyang has deliberately ignored Seoul's good gestures. Kim Jong-un wants to talk directly with Trump, undermining Moon, but the U.S. is reluctant to talk with North Korea unless Kim denuclearizes or at least freezes its nuclear programs. So there is no easy answer to the North Korean situation. This deep-rooted belief in communistic principles, self-reliancy, and military might has put them in a very sticky situation. Allowing such a volatile country to possess a nuclear weapon is a risky business, but possession of it may legitimize the country on a worldwide level. Making matters worse, the media outlets in both countries are busy demonizing the opposing leader and emphasizing the foreign threat. So the propaganda's gone wild in North Korea. The media is doing their best here to make it into a crazy situation, and it just makes me fearful of the outcome once people start, kind of daring, oh, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? So, that's why it's a sticky situation. The whole world is involved in this conflict, and militarily, we're looking at really bad outcomes if we decide to go forth with it. So hopefully I educated you a little bit more on the past of the North Korean conflict and where we're kind of headed in the future, so that you can make a better educated decision on how you feel about it when you're out there talking with people and, giving your opinion. Because I always believe you have to have the history to know where you're going in the future. Well, that's all I got for you today. It was a great show. Heard chapter 28 of The Walls of Freedom. We went ahead and had Dale and Lisa on the show. So much fun. Like I say, I always love having.
Thank you for joining Sarah for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, and The Walls of Freedom at www.author.sarahfhathaway.com. If you love this podcast, please head on over to iTunes or Amazon.com and let everyone know by leaving a review.